Some children don't remember being children. They don't remember safety as something natural. They don't remember play without vigilance. They don't remember adults as protectors, only as responsibilities. While other children were learning how to dream, they were learning how to survive. They watched the room before they spoke. They sensed moods before words were said. They learned when to disappear and when to become useful. And the strange part is this: from the outside, they looked mature, calm, responsible, wise for their age. But inside, something vital never formed. This video is about those children. The ones who grew up too fast. The ones who never truly felt like children and are now adults carrying an invisible weight they can't name. If this subject feels uncomfortably familiar, subscribe. Not for entertainment, but because this channel speaks to what most people never talk about. Now, let's begin. Some children never remember being children. Not because childhood never happened, but because it was interrupted before it could settle inside them. Their memories don't begin with play. They begin with awareness, with watching, with listening too carefully, with sensing tension in rooms before words were spoken. While other children were learning how to imagine, they were learning how to anticipate. While others were being protected, they were protecting themselves. And the world never noticed, because what it saw was not damage. It saw competence. It saw calm. It saw a child who didn't complain. A child who understood things early. A child who didn't cause problems. And so no one asked the most important question: what did it cost them to become this way? There is a moment, often forgotten, when a child realizes something essential is missing. Not food, not shelter, not rules, but emotional safety. The realization doesn't come as a thought. It comes as a shift in the nervous system. A quiet internal conclusion that sounds like this: I can't rely on them. Not spoken, not explained, simply felt. From that moment on, the child stops relaxing into the world and starts scanning it. Faces are read like maps. Voices are analyzed for threat. Silence becomes suspicious. The body stays ready. This is where childhood quietly ends. Not with a trauma that can be pointed to, but with a pattern that becomes permanent. Carl Jung understood that the psyche adapts faster than consciousness. The child does not choose to grow up. The psyche compensates for instability by accelerating development. It creates maturity as a survival strategy. But this maturity skips something essential. It skips safety. And without safety, play cannot exist. Play requires the belief that tomorrow will come and someone will still be there. When that belief is missing, seriousness replaces curiosity. Responsibility replaces spontaneity. Control replaces wonder. The child becomes useful instead of alive. Adults often praise this. They say things like, "You're so mature for your age," without realizing what they're applauding. They admire the child who doesn't need much, who doesn't cry too loudly, who doesn't ask difficult questions. But what they're really admiring is self-erasure. They don't see the cost because the cost is internal. The cost is paid in the nervous system, and it will be paid for decades. Children who grow up too fast don't just think differently. Their bodies remember differently. Their nervous systems stay activated long after danger has passed. They grow into adults who can't fully relax without feeling guilty, who feel anxious when life is calm, who feel uneasy in silence, because their body learned something very early. Calm means something bad is coming. Stillness feels unsafe. Rest feels like exposure. So they stay busy, productive, always doing something. Not because they love it, but because movement feels safer than presence. This is why so many adults feel exhausted without understanding why. They are not tired from effort. They are tired from vigilance. From decades of holding themselves together without support. Jung would say that instinct was sacrificed to protect the ego, But instincts don't disappear when suppressed. They turn inward. They become symptoms: emotional numbness, chronic fatigue, a sense of emptiness that no achievement fills. And the most painful part is that these people often blame themselves. They think something is wrong with them, without realizing they are living with an adaptation that never got a chance to turn off. To survive emotionally, the child creates a version of themselves that works. Not a self that feels, but a self that functions. This false self becomes the identity. The responsible one, the reliable one, the one who doesn't need help. And this identity is rewarded. It becomes reinforced by teachers, parents, peers, society. Over time, the real self is pushed further underground. Jung called this the persona, a mask formed to meet the world's expectations. But when the persona forms too early, the real self never learns how to breathe. As an adult, this shows up as a strange absence. You are present in your life, but not inside yourself. You perform well, but feel empty afterward. You succeed, but feel no satisfaction. You connect, but feel unseen. Because the child who was never allowed to be small was never allowed to be real. And authenticity cannot develop in an environment where survival is the priority. One of the most painful consequences of growing up too fast is difficulty receiving love. These individuals often give deeply. They listen, they support, they understand. But when care is offered to them, something tightens inside. Attention feels intrusive. Gentleness feels suspicious. Dependence feels dangerous. They learned early that needing too much creates instability, so they learn to need nothing. But adulthood demands vulnerability, and vulnerability feels like threat, so they keep control. They keep distance. They keep composure. They may crave closeness, but panic when it arrives. They may want intimacy, but feel suffocated by it. And they wonder why they feel lonely, even when surrounded by people. The answer is not that they are unlovable. It is that love requires the very part of them that had to be suppressed to survive. Jung said the shadow contains not only darkness, but unlived life. And for these individuals, the shadow is not rage or aggression. It is grief. Grief for the childhood that never happened, for the protection that never arrived, for the softness that was never allowed. But grief feels dangerous, because to grieve is to admit loss. And many would rather carry tension forever than feel that pain once. So the child remains buried. But buried things do not stay quiet. They leak into adult life in subtle ways. Burnout that comes without warning. Relationships that feel draining or unbalanced. A constant sense of longing with no clear object. The feeling that life is happening, but you are slightly outside of it. Without awareness, people recreate the emotional climate they grew up in, not because they want pain, but because familiarity feels safe. So they find themselves in relationships where they must overfunction. They enter environments where they must be the strong one. They attract people who need saving, fixing, stabilizing. Being needed feels safer than being loved, because being loved requires presence, and presence requires safety. Each repetition reinforces the original wound, and the inner child watches it happen again. Silent, patient, waiting. At some point, life intervenes. Burnout, loss, emotional numbness. A moment where the old strategy stops working. You can't outfunction the emptiness anymore. And this is where things begin to change. Not because it feels good, but because avoidance is no longer possible. This moment is deeply unsettling, because it collapses the story you told yourself. The story that you were fine, that nothing affected you, that you were just strong. Jung believed that transformation begins when the ego cracks, when the persona can no longer carry the weight. This is not weakness. This is the beginning of truth. In this space, something emerges, not as a memory, but as a feeling. a heaviness, a sadness without words, a tenderness you don't know what to do with. This is the child, the part of you that never got to exist freely. And now you face a choice: suppress it again, or finally listen. Listening does not mean drowning in the past. It means acknowledging reality. It means allowing yourself to feel what was never felt, to rest without justification, to need without shame, to soften without fear. This is not easy. In fact, it is one of the hardest psychological transitions a person can make, because it requires giving up an identity that once kept you alive. But something remarkable happens when you do. The nervous system begins to settle. The body learns that rest is not danger. Relationships change. You stop overgiving. You stop overfunctioning. You become selective, not because you are cold, but because you are present. And presence has limits. You begin to feel again. Joy, but also sadness. Calm, but also vulnerability. And for the first time, these emotions are not overwhelming. They are integrated. Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming whole. Not perfect, whole. Wholeness does not mean becoming childlike again. It means allowing the child and the adult to coexist. Strength without rigidity, sensitivity without collapse, responsibility without self-abandonment. You no longer need to prove your maturity. You no longer need to earn your right to exist. This is where life changes quietly. You stop reacting from old wounds. You stop living from hypervigilance. You stop mistaking survival for identity. And the world responds differently. Not because you demand respect, but because you embody presence. People feel it, even if they cannot name it. Some will drift away, especially those who benefited from your overfunctioning. This can hurt, but it is also clarifying. You begin to see which connections were built on necessity and which can exist in truth. If you are still listening, it is likely because something inside you recognizes this story. Not intellectually, somatically. You feel it in your body, in your exhaustion, in your longing. And that recognition matters, because awareness is the first step out of repetition. You were not born this way. You adapted. And adaptations can be renegotiated, gently, slowly, with patience. You don't need to become someone new. You need to return to what was interrupted. And that return does not happen all at once. It happens in small moments. Choosing rest without apology. Saying no without explanation. Letting yourself be held without tension. Allowing joy without waiting for the cost. This is not regression. It is integration. And when the child inside finally feels safe, something extraordinary happens. You stop living as a response to the past and begin living as a presence in the present. If this video resonated, stay here. This channel is for those who grew up too soon and are now learning how to live slowly, consciously, and whole. Write in the comments, "I see the child I was." And if you're ready to continue this journey, watch the next video. It goes deeper than you expect. For depth, for the slow work of becoming whole. You are not broken. You are early.